All right, so this is the story of my fourth Miata, the white one. So I was on Marketplace like I usually am, and I came across these photos here of a 1990 white NA Miata. And it was sitting on the original wheels. It looked to be all relatively stock. It's just, you don't see clean, well taken care of Miatas that are under $6,000 very often, especially if it's rust free and the body is in good shape. I mean, these are hard to come by nowadays. So it's 3.5 hours away in Akron, Ohio, but I reached out to the seller and it was still available. So she said there wasn't any rust and I was totally in. I mean, I was committed to go the very next day. So I asked if I could leave a deposit so she could hold the car. I'm sure she was getting flooded with messages. She wasn't responding to me, so I even left her my phone number hoping to get her on the phone. Finally, I got a response. She said there was a lot of interest. The problem here is she wasn't willing to give me the address to the meetup location until 1 p.m. the next day. That means that I either am going to give up on the car because I won't get there till 4:30, or I have to head out on my 3.5 hour journey without knowing where I'm going until the last hour of the trip. Pretty bizarre way of handling business, but I didn't really have a choice. Okay, so it was really hard getting responses out of her. I'm sure she was still being flooded with messages, but she certainly wasn't responding to me. What was even more frustrating was I could see she was reading all of my messages. She was just choosing not to respond. So I had no choice. The morning of the trip, I decided, I'm going to blow her up and hopefully pry an address out of her. But if I can't, I'm going to get on the road with my family in tow, and I'm going to hope that this isn't a scam. Well, lo and behold, Deborah did end up sending the address to an elementary school nearby her house, and when I arrived, the Miata was there. What else was there was 4 other annoyed-looking people also waiting to buy the car. However, Deborah's husband, who was managing the sale, told everybody that I had first right of refusal or dibs on the car, and apparently they were waiting to see if I was willing to buy it. Now, I did take it for a test drive, and when I did, I found that there was something wrong with it. It was really, really down on power below 4,000 RPMs, but after 4,000, it would take off like normal. Basically, it felt like to me that the timing was off, and if the ignition timing was off, that wasn't going to deter me from buying it. As long as there wasn't any rust on this car, consider it sold. I'll fix whatever ignition issue or timing issue is going on. Maybe, the timing belt skipped a couple teeth is what I thought, but there was absolutely no way I was leaving without this car. So I gave him the cash and the $300 extra, and I was outski. Sorry to the people that, didn't get the car, but I think everyone kind of understood that this sale was mismanaged from the beginning. On the way home, about 20 minutes in, I could tell I wasn't going to be able to drive this car 3.5 hours back to Detroit. The ignition timing issues were making it very difficult to get off the line, especially from a light, and there was rainstorms coming in. It was just a combination for disaster. So I did find a local U-Haul with a trailer available, so that's what we did. We got her home, and of course I started tearing into it in the garage right away. After doing a little bit of internet research, I found out that my symptoms of having low power under 4,000 RPMs was indicative of the infamous short nose crank wobble issues that a lot of these Miatas are prone to. So unfortunately, there was only a few things I can do to repair this. Now, they say that you can replace the crankshaft, which is an engine out procedure and obviously very time extensive, or there is a Band-Aid type fix, but apparently it can also hold long term, which is known as the Loctite fix. But first things first, I had to find out what was the situation with this crank pulley. Was the Loctite fix already applied to it before, or is this the first time that the keyway for the crankshaft had been damaged? So in order for me to find out, I had to start taking everything down, tearing it apart, and get down to the crankshaft itself. Once I was there, I could find out what the condition was, if there was any Loctite or some sort of thread lock or adhesion to lock the pulley in place. And as you can see here, clearly there was. That gray material that's in the keyway, around the keyway, is actually Loctite from where the previous owner had taken this to a shop and tried to get the low power symptoms repaired. And lo and behold, it already had this Band-Aid fix applied. Apparently it didn't keep working too long because when I got it, there was no power either. Here you can see the damaged keyway where the Woodruff key would have gone, and how after time it looks like it kind of wears down a groove to the left side of the keyway. You can see it really good in this one. So because of that little extra groove that gets worn down, the crank pulley is actually able to shift on the crankshaft, which effectively adjusts the timing or retards the timing. And that's why we're having really low power in the low power band area, low RPMs. So here I'm applying the Loctite to fill in the gap. Now this is a real procedure. There's actually directions online on how to do this. And I did it, quote unquote, by the book as much as you can. We were able to successfully get the crank gear over the crankshaft with the Loctite in place. Here I am using a crankshaft holding tool so that I could tighten up or torque down the crank pulley bolt according to spec. Now this is a very, very important key component of doing this job, especially any timing belt job on a Mazda Miata. You really need to isolate the crank gear in order to get the correct torque. And there's no real good way to do that. You can't just use an impact, because if you over torque it, then you will also have other issues with the crank as well. Okay, very first crank. I'm gonna give it a shot. Let's see how this goes. Okay, so on these NA Miatas, there's a dummy port right here because the battery's in the trunk that you need to expose and tie into for 12 volt power. And then from there, I'm just grounding out to a bolt right here on the shock tower, and you do clamp onto the #1 cylinder coils. All right, so at this point, I didn't really capture any more good footage of me timing the engine. There's a lot of good how-to videos already out there on how to do this stuff, and frankly, I'm not the guy to make those videos. This is more of the journey of buying, selling, flipping, fixing cars. And of course, I know this wasn't the most exciting video, but it was necessary for the story and the journey of JDM Garage Hero. So I appreciate you guys coming along, listening. And if you like what you see, give me a thumbs up. I got a lot more fun stuff coming along. Thanks a lot and take good care.